Hello everyone, this is the text adventure project. This is the final project for our class. It's gonna be a text adventure, so there will be no graphics used, and all we're going to do is make some choices, and based on those choices the stats of the player will change, and eventually if the player behaves in the right way, the player wins. This is not a video where I show code, this is where I explain what needs to be done and give some comments about the assignment details. Alright, so first of all, it's a text game, and the game should involve some variables describing the player. Some of them, like you ask them once and you keep them, name of the player, probably no reason to change that, and some of them should change, such as player health, location, power, attack, defense, whatever, knowledge, whatever you choose. So your variables can be strings, your variables can be integers or floats, if so you choose, and they can be booleans. For example, has sword variable equals true, that means your player has a sword, obtained it from somewhere. Solved puzzle variable equals false, did not solve the puzzle yet. You may use, as I show in the next videos, you may use either variables that are simple data types like boolean or integers, or you can use one dictionary. Or somehow you can play with both, depends on exactly what you want and how comfortable you are with dictionaries. In some way, dictionaries may make it a little easier in the end. Okay, so your player should have some stats that are changing through the game. So it cannot be just printed statements. A game must include at least 5 different rooms which player can explore. So don't take rooms literally. Some sort of features of your game. It can be a castle and a village and a forest where your knight is going, and every time the knight can increase their attack defense skill, or like gain something, or answer the puzzle and also gain something. So the game must include at least 2 items that must be collected to beat the game. What kind of items we need? For example, to beat the game, you need a sword and a shield. So unless you collected them from one of those locations that you visited, you cannot really win. And there should be some sort of puzzle. Now the exact behavior is over here, but the main thing is to understand that puzzle does not even have to be a puzzle. From the point of view of programming, if your puzzle is what is 2 plus 2, it's okay with me. So you don't need to overthink that, make it something super complicated. As long as it is clear what to do for a player, because I'm going to run your game, I'm going to look at first whether it runs, whether it hits all the requirements, whether it is winnable, and so on. So some sort of puzzle that the user answers and maybe like gains a sword, so to relate it to a variable. In some way you want to store what happened in the game. Not like overdo it, every little visit doesn't have to be recorded, although that would be a fun feature. Next, you need to be able to save and load. What do you save and what do you load? Whichever variables you choose to have, one dictionary that has all the current properties of your in-game character, or separate variables, you need to be able to save those values and then load them. So your game will have an option load game or save game, as every game nowadays probably should, or most games should. And You can use various tools to do that, either Pico, which we were just talking about in the chapter about dictionaries, or actually text. It's a little more difficult to save variables as a text, but you can make it work. You can definitely make it work. So I would prefer using Pico. Again, it's more recent material, but also it's more convenient. Now the game must be winnable. There should be some winning condition as you go around and you gain your experience, or you obtain the items that you need to obtain and answer the puzzle. There should be a winning condition in your game, such as if something and something and something, then you won. And the game should stop after you won. Obviously, there is no other reason to play it. It should be winnable. That is, if I go around, I gain a sword, I answered the puzzle, and I earned a certain level, whatever the level may be. That should be recognized by your code, so there should be some if-else condition about that, and you should win a game that way. So the game should handle incorrect input. It doesn't have to be try except, although there may be a reason to include try except at a certain point in the game. Depends on your design exactly. But in case the user actually gives incorrect text choice, like you have choices 1 through 7, each of them means some activity, and somebody enters 0. So the game should respond that this is not the right choice. So as you see, your code should be well commented. Don't go overboard whether with comments or with printing statements. It should be rather clear what's happening, so you should have enough prompts and printing statements to describe what it is, but per se there isn't too much credit allocated for creating a super colorful descriptions of whatever is going on. And in any case, that should not be your first concern. Now, suggestions. Work on more complicated features such as basic menu system, save load, and variable management and updates before simpler ones. So basically, your descriptions should go last. So provide hints and items in each room that will create features in each location, whether it's a room or it's a pirate village or it is something else. So call them the way you want it. It doesn't have to be rooms, literally. And in every room, multiple things should happen. For example, your room, quote unquote, is like a village, and your knight walks into the village, and the knight can add eat, has a choice to eat and increase health, or to talk to the locals to find some useful hint, or something like that. In general, there should be, where did I say it? In every room, there should be multiple things to do. And I may be saying it somewhere. So you don't have to go north, south, east, or west literally. You may instead do 4 different things, like talk to a wizard, exchange items, and whatnot. In any case, in every location, maybe it's a good idea to present every location as a function. There should be choices what to do in this location. So allowing the player to move or to just choose what to do in that location, entering the correct number, like 1, 2, 3, 4 was the options. If the player enters 1, the player is talking to the locals in the village. If the player enters 2, the player improves health or rests and whatever. So exact plot of your game is up to you. There should be a plot. I don't know or really care how elaborate it should be. As I run your game, and I will run your game, I should have enough information to navigate, to win, and to see that my stats are changing through the game, and to be able to make choices. So that is important. And for the submission, you need a Python file that contains all the code. If you choose to do something more elaborate, it may be more than one Python file. You also need to submit text file for the plagiarism checker and upload them separately. I mean, upload them in the same place, but as separate files. Alright, so now important warnings, what not to do, repeat, not to do. So one thing not to do is try to Google a project. So Python text game example. And then you go somewhere and it kind of teaches you how to make a text game, and then you copy and paste, and you can find far more sophisticated versions of the games and submit that. That is obviously cheating. So please don't do that and don't be this guy. Alright, another thing not to do is not to keep adding code if your current code does not work. As the semester goes to the close, I will have less time to work with you individually, and I may very well not have time to look through 200 lines of something that you either typed up or copy-pasted from various locations, and most of it does not work. So when you develop your program, here are the most important things. First, start simple, very simple. Like 15 lines of code is a good start. Like one while loop with choices and with printing statements, basically look at our haunted houses project, is plenty. And you develop. As a software developer, you are developing, and you always start from some simple idea, have some long-term plan in mind, and at every point think, how can I test it, how can I debug it, how can I make sure it works. A code that is 40 lines long and more or less works is easy to debug, especially if you use functions and you debug each function separately, which should be a standard, where whenever you wrote a function, debug it separately before plugging it into your game. And if you have 40 lines of code that works, you can add a few lines and then run it again, see how it works, add another function to it, and see how it works. And then if you are stuck somewhere, it's easy to go to previous versions. So save often and use different names like text game version 1, text game version 10, and so on. And as you go on, if you are stuck somewhere, you can of course ask me, come to my office hours, but do so sooner than later. And again, do not throw in more lines of code when your current code is broken, because it's gonna only make more confusing and more challenging. And sometimes if I see that somebody wrote a bunch of printing statements, bunch of lines of code, and none of it works, what I will suggest you to do is just to start from scratch, like delete everything and restart, if you don't have previous versions to fall back to. So start early and start very humble. Do not create yourself big grand projects, so your stats should change by 1 whenever they change from true to false, and it doesn't have to be realistic. I'm going to look at the programming side of things, not as much as how colorful and awesome the story is and how many printing statements you have, there should be enough. There shouldn't be many, because that is just more stuff for me to read in the end, and it's much harder to debug your code when you have printing statements all over the place, or when you typed up 40 lines and never ran it. Last thing, expect it to take more time than you think, especially the part where you bring all the details together. When you bring your small functions and helper functions that you created together into one while loop, into one main function that describes the mainline logic of your program, and do allocate enough time for it. And I guess that's it. Let me know if you have any questions.